3 cycles ago, the Galactic Council let humans join their ranks. It was one of the smoothest integrations in a long time. Earth was just a small blue marble spinning in a part of the galaxy that most species thought was boring. But the people who lived there turned out to be very nice. Ryan Cole was the human representative, and he quickly became one of the most popular people in the whole council. He was easy to get along with and always had a smile or a joke ready. It was amazing how well he could communicate with people from different species. The other ambassadors were excited to meet with him. He remembered things about their families, asked about their home worlds, and really seemed to care about getting to know them better instead of just helping Earth. The people who worked in council space were very similar. They could connect with almost anyone, whether they were scientists, engineers, traders, or diplomats. They were quick to laugh, learned new customs quickly, and had a level of emotional intelligence that many other species found refreshing. In a galaxy where most interactions were formal and planned out, humans brought a warmth that was very rare. The council's xenobiologists had written a few reports about how humans work that were, to be honest, a little strange. Most peaceful species have eyes on the sides of their heads, but humans had eyes that faced forward. This gave them great depth perception and the ability to focus hard on things in front of them. They also had this strange ability to last a long time, which didn't make sense for a species that said it was mostly social and cooperative. In tests of stamina, humans could literally walk for days without stopping, outlasting almost any other species. There were other strange things too. People could follow movement with amazing accuracy. They had more fast-twitch muscle fibers than they needed for a species that mostly sat in offices or tended crops. They had sharp canines that were good for tearing meat, but they also ate fruits and vegetables just as easily. They sweat through their skin, which seemed to be a way for them to cool down and keep their body temperature in check while they were doing a lot of physical activity. But here's the thing, none of it seemed to matter much in real life. Yes, people ate meat, but so did a lot of other council species, and they weren't hunters. People were omnivores, which means they could eat anything and adapt to any food they found. That looked more like evolution in action than anything bad. They did have good eyesight and stamina, but they used those skills for sports, exploration, and fun. They were calm. They talked it over. They reached a deal. They thought it was important to work together and help each other in all their business dealings. The scientific reports were put in the archives with a note saying they were interesting but not important. You couldn't judge a species by what it had done in the past after all. The important thing was who they chose to be right now, and it was clear that people had chosen to be friends with everyone they met. They followed council law, helped with scientific projects that everyone could work on, and even helped settle fights between other species. They were great members of the galactic community. Life in council space went on without any problems. Human colonies grew, businesses thrived, and human culture began to mix with the thousands of other cultures that made up the galactic civilization. There were human restaurants on dozens of worlds, alien clubs playing human music, and human books being translated into hundreds of languages. The integration was going very well. The council space had a lot of trade going on at Station Kepler 7, which was a huge structure that orbited an asteroid belt full of resources. There were more than 40,000 people from almost 100 different species who lived and worked there. It was a melting pot where you could find almost anything and meet almost anyone. The station had markets, neighborhoods, and industrial areas, and it was so different that it felt like a small version of the whole galaxy. There were 347 people among those 40,000. They worked as traders, mechanics, teachers, doctors, and everything else. They had fully adapted to life on the station, making friends with people of all species, falling in love, starting families, and building lives far from Earth. After that, the Vrexian swarm showed up. As always, the Vrexian attack came out of nowhere. Their ships dropped out of hyperspace and started firing right away, moving to break through the station's hull. The Vrexians were one of the galaxy's worst nightmares. They were a species that had evolved as pure apex predators on a world full of death. They were huge, armored, strong, and never gave up. They had taken over 12 star systems by being very violent. They didn't talk, didn't take prisoners, and didn't show mercy. The Council's peacekeeping forces rushed to help, but everyone knew what was really going on. Most of the species in the Council were herbivores or peaceful omnivores. Their security guards were trained, but they had come from animals that were prey. They just couldn't compete with the Vrexians, who were real predators that lived for the hunt. It had nothing to do with bravery or training. It was millions of years of evolution telling them to run, hide, or freeze. The alarms for evacuation went off all over Station Kepler 7, and the orderly chaos of getting away began. The Council was afraid of the Vrexians in the dark spaces between stars. They were almost 8 feet tall and had thick armor made of chitin that had evolved over millions of years on a planet where everything was trying to kill everything else. Their home world was a nightmare of volcanoes, poisonous air, and creatures that were even worse than the Vrexians. They had turned into perfect killing machines in order to live there. They had 4 arms, and each one ended in claws that could cut through steel that had been reinforced. They could easily crush bones with their jaws. Their mental state was even worse than their physical abilities. Vrexians didn't just fight, they also hunted. They liked it. Fighting was their way of life, their religion, and the only reason they were alive. They had spread across 12 star systems not because they needed the resources or the land, but because they wanted to be challenged. They needed food. The Council's peacekeeping troops were brave, well-trained, and not ready for anything like this. Most of them came from species that had evolved to live in groups or as small prey. The Thel were like deer in space with thumbs that could move. The Millikan came from something that looked like rabbits. Even the stronger species like the Torgash, which were built like rhinos, thought like grazers. They could fight back if they had to, but their bodies told them to run away from predators like the Vrexians. When the Vrexian boarding parties broke through the outer hull of Station Kepler 7, the security forces did their best. They really did. They stayed where they were, shot their guns, and tried to stop the invasion. But it was clear within minutes that this wasn't going to work. The Vrexians moved through the defenses as if they weren't even there. They were faster, stronger, and had millions of years of instinct telling them how to hunt. The security team started to pull back to give the evacuation more time. The station's emergency procedures started to work on their own. Blast doors blocked off parts of the building to slow down the attackers. The intercom system yelled evacuation orders in many languages. People from 100 different species rushed to the escape pod bays and the few ships that were docked at the station. People carried their kids, helped the elderly along, and everyone moved in a chaotic but organized way, knowing that their lives depended on getting to safety. There were 347 people who lived on Station Kepler, 7 in the crowds. There was Beth, who owned a cafe in the market area. Travis, who was an engineer. Nicole is a teacher. Danny is in charge of freight. Normal people going about their daily lives are now stuck in a nightmare they never thought would happen. The Council's emergency command center was keeping an eye on everything through the station's many security cameras. They saw the Vrexians move through corridor after corridor. They saw their peacekeeping forces being beaten. They saw civilians running away in fear. And they saw the people moving with the crowds toward the evacuation points, just like they thought they would. Then things changed. The emergency channel picked up Ambassador Ryan Cole's voice, but it didn't sound like him. Ryan's voice was friendly and warm, with a slight accent that made him sound easy to talk to. Everyone who knew him knew it. The voice that came through the speakers was now very different. It was flat, chilly, not feeling anything at all. The voice made something deep in your brain sit up and pay attention. Council Command, this is Ambassador Cole. Keep all non-human staff moving toward the places where they can leave. We're taking care of the Vrexian invasion. There was a long silence in the command center. The Millikan officer in charge of communications looked confused. Ambassador, please explain. Are you asking for help with evacuation? No. Hold everyone else back. Only people in the affected areas. We're on it. The officer looked up at the Torgash commander, who was just as confused. They could see something happening in the evacuation corridors on the screens. The people had stopped going toward the escape pods. They were going the other way instead. Going back to the parts that were broken. Toward the Vrexians. Ambassador Cole, our readings show that you're getting closer to the enemy. This is not how we normally evacuate. The voice that was strange and flat came back. We know. Avoid parts 12 through 18. We'll let you know when it's done. The commander yelled, when what's done, but the channel was already quiet. The council officers were completely confused as they watched the security feeds and saw every person on the station change direction. They were no longer running. They were walking with a purpose, and they moved through the halls in a strange way that looked almost like a dance. Some were going to storage lockers. Some went to places where they could do maintenance. They were gathering things like tools, pipes, and anything else that could be used as a weapon. Their faces were the strangest thing. The fear was gone. Gone for good. The council officers couldn't quite make out what was there instead. Their faces were calm, focused, and almost eerily blank. But somehow the scientist reports had said their eyes, those eyes that looked forward, had changed. They were locked in place, following and figuring things out. Someone in the command center pulled up the biometric data for people. Heart rates were higher than normal but steady. Adrenaline levels were going up. But their stress levels were going down, not up. It was as if seeing the Vrexians had somehow made them calmer, not more scared. The Millikan officer whispered, "What are they doing?" No one knew the answer. They just stared at the screens, trying to figure out why the friendly, peaceful, and diplomatic humans were walking right into the path of the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. And why they seemed to be ready for it. The council officers in the command center couldn't stop looking at the screens. What they were seeing made no sense at all based on what they thought they knew about people. In Corridor 12B they first met. 5 Vrexian warriors on a hunting trip turned a corner, expecting to find more animals running away. Instead they saw 12 people waiting for them. The people weren't hiding or running away. They were just standing there, spread out across the hallway in a way that looked almost casual, but it wasn't. One of the Vrexians let out a terrifying roar that had scared 1,000 species into running away. The people didn't even move. They stood there watching and waiting. And then the council saw something that had never happened before. The people moved. It wasn't like watching soldiers or police fight an enemy. It was something else altogether. Their shoulders rolled back, their posture changed, and all of a sudden they didn't look like the friendly engineers and merchants they used to be. They looked like they could hurt you. One of them made a quick hand gesture, just a small movement, and the whole group moved right away as if they had practiced it 1,000 times. They spread out across the width of the hallway, making the Vrexians have to pay attention to more than one thing at a time. 3 people came at the first Vrexian from different directions when it charged. They weren't trying to beat it, that would have been impossible. Instead, they were using its own momentum against it, aiming for joints and weak points in the armor and moving with a terrifying efficiency that showed they knew a lot about anatomy and leverage. Beth, the owner of the cafe who made the best coffee on the station, had somehow gotten a long piece of reinforced pipe. She hit the Vrexian's knee joints with precise, deadly blows, as if she had been training with it her whole life. 2 other creatures were already there when the first one fell, pushing it down and finishing it off. The whole thing only lasted about 20 seconds. No one said anything in the command center. They were too surprised. There was a different scene on another screen. A group of Vrexians had trapped what they thought were civilians trying to escape in a cargo bay. But the humans weren't running away, they were taking the Vrexians exactly where they wanted them to go. As soon as the predators got into the bay, people fell from the gantries above, came out from behind cargo containers and came out of service tunnels. The Vrexians were surrounded. It was hard to watch what happened next, not because it was very violent but because it was so planned out. The humans moved like water, always staying just out of reach of the Vrexians' attacks. They used everything they could find as weapons. Hooks for cargo turned into spears. Clubs turned into loading tools. One man used a broken chair to blind a Vrexian, and then 3 other men brought it down. But what really bothered the council observers were their eyes. The scientists had seen those eyes looking forward before, but now they knew what they were really for. The humans were keeping an eye on every move, guessing when attacks would happen before they did, and reading body language with the same skill that only predators had. The humans were already moving and responding when a Vrexian shifted its weight to attack, as if they could see the future. And they were talking to each other without words. They were coordinating complicated tactical moves with only small glances, tiny gestures and nods of their heads. The council realized with growing horror that it was pack behavior. This is how hunters and packs worked. They communicated without speaking, planned attacks together, and worked together to take down prey that was much bigger than them. In Engineering Section 14, a man named Travis was doing something that would later be studied in military schools all over the galaxy. He was an engineer, which meant that he worked on fixing environmental systems and calibrating sensors. He was now facing 3 Vrexian warriors with only a broken plasma torch and whatever he could find at his workstation. The first Vrexian came at him with all 4 of its claws out. Travis didn't try to get away. Instead, he moved to the side at the last possible second, using the wall of the hallway to block the creature's path. He hit the lower arm joint with the plasma torch as it went by, hurting the limb. The Vrexian roared and turned, but Travis was already moving. He used support pillars and equipment racks to control the space and never let the creature get a clear shot. He was moving it around. He was like a sheepdog with a wolf, keeping it from going where it wanted to go and putting it in positions where it couldn't use its superior strength. When the second Vrexian joined the fight, Travis quickly changed his plans. He used the layout of the corridor to keep them from working together and made them get in each other's way. Then 3 more people came, maintenance workers who had armed themselves with whatever they could find. There was no need for them to talk about strategy. They just looked at each other, looked at what was going on, and then moved. All 3 Vrexians were down in less than 30 seconds. Travis's biometric readings showed that his heart rate was high but under control. He was breathing normally. There was no panic or fear. Just pay attention. Similar things were happening all over the station. The Vrexians found people waiting for them in the residential areas, the market districts, and the industrial zones. And these people weren't soldiers. These people were teachers, shopkeepers, office workers, and parents. People who were once normal but had somehow changed into something else. The council's xenobiologist read her old reports on how humans evolved, seeing them in a new light and feeling more and more scared. She had written about persistence hunters. Evolved to chase prey over long distances until it fell over from exhaustion. Pack hunters who worked together in complicated ways. They could eat almost anything, which means they could live in any environment while hunting. Those eyes that look ahead to follow. That ability to keep going for a long time. Those hands can hold on tightly and use tools gently. The ability to throw things with deadly accuracy, which is a skill that only humans in the galaxy seem to have. The ability to run for hours while sweating to cool off, which no other species could do. The reports had everything in them. They just didn't get what it meant. A camera on the main screen caught something that made everyone in the command center stop talking. One of the biggest Vrexian warriors had trapped a human woman in a maintenance junction. She was only about 5.5 feet tall and was only holding a broken piece of decking. The Vrexian roared at her, expecting her to be scared. She grinned. A smile that wasn't friendly. Not a smile that shows you're nervous. The smile said that it knew exactly what it was doing. She changed her stance, balanced her weight, and stared at the creature in front of her. And at that moment all the species watching knew the truth. The people weren't protecting themselves. They weren't fighting because they were scared or desperate. They were looking for food. This was what they were made to do, what millions of years of evolution had made them to do. They chose to be friendly, warm, and diplomatic. A choice they could change. The Vrexian lunged. The woman moved like water, hitting twice before the other person even knew she had dodged. 2 more people came out of a side hallway and moved in perfect sync without saying a word. The Vrexian wasn't getting back up after 30 seconds. Someone finally spoke up in the command center. By the ancestors, what are they? The xenobiologist looked at her reports, the screens, and the biometric data that showed 347 humans all moving with the same calm, focused, and predatory efficiency. They're still the same, she whispered. We just weren't paying attention. After 2 hours and 17 minutes of the Vrexian attack, Station Kepler 7 stopped working. The alarms for emergencies stopped. The gunfire stopped. The yelling was done. They watched the security feeds at the Council Command Center in a state of shock, trying to make sense of what they had just seen. The Vrexian attack force had left. Not gone back. Not pushed back. Gone. Removed completely. The Council's combat analysts started to look at the numbers to see if they could figure it out. The Vrexians had sent about 200 warriors, which should have been enough to easily take the whole station. They had to deal with 347 people who were not soldiers. Not soldiers. Not Marines. Just regular people who happened to be people. The people had lost some lives. 14 people died and 31 were hurt. The council officers felt those losses deeply because each number stood for a friend or family member of someone. But the tactical situation was mind-blowing. A group of untrained civilians had killed a Vrexian war party while losing less than 5% of their own people. Later, military historians would say that it was one of the most unfair battles in history. The people were now moving through the station, helping the injured, checking on the other species that had been evacuated, and making sure everyone was safe. Their medical staff were treating injuries with the same skill and care they always had. Travis, the man who had killed 3 Vrexians, was now helping an old Millikan couple get back to their room. Beth, the owner of the cafe, was already talking about cleaning up her shop and making coffee for the survivors who were still in shock. It was like seeing a switch turn back on. They were back to being themselves, kind, helpful, and friendly. But now everyone who saw them knew they could be more than that. Ambassador Ryan Cole asked for an emergency meeting with the whole council. In the Grand Chamber, representatives from hundreds of worlds came together to hear what the human had to say. When Ryan came in, everyone stopped talking and looked at him with new eyes. He looked like he needed some sleep. His face had a few scratches from the fight, and there were a couple of holes in his uniform. But he was breathing normally and walking with the same easy confidence he always had. He stood at the podium and looked out at the group of people who were there. That warmth was back in his eyes, the kind of friendliness that everyone had come to love. But now they could see something else under it. Something that had always been there but they hadn't seen it before. Ryan started with, "Thank you for getting together on such short notice." His voice was back to normal. "I know what you all saw today was unexpected. And I think we need to talk about something we should have talked about 3 years ago when we first joined the council." He took a breath to collect his thoughts. We need to talk about where people come from. About who we are. There was no sound in the chamber. All of the representatives were paying attention to him. Ryan went on to say, Earth is what we call a death world. We didn't know that until we met you and saw what normal planets are like. Our gravity is stronger than most of yours. There is more oxygen in our air. The weather is worse here. Our animals are more dangerous. For most of the history of the galaxy, Earth would have been considered too dangerous and unpredictable for colonization. He pulled up a holographic display that showed the evolutionary tree of Earth. Persistence hunting was a way for people to adapt to that environment. We weren't the strongest hunters on our planet. We weren't born with the fastest or most weapons. But we could do something that almost no one else could: run for hours, days even. The display showed early humans chasing animals across wide-open savannas. We would pick something bigger and stronger than us and just follow it. For hours and hours they never stopped or gave up. The prey would run until its muscles gave out and it couldn't move anymore because it was so tired. After that, we'd walk up and finish it. A representative from Millikan moved around in their seat uncomfortably. It was scary for a species that had evolved as prey animals. But that wasn't what really made us work well, Ryan said. Many predators can catch prey. The fact that we did it in groups is what made us special. We learned how to work together with dozens or even hundreds of other people in perfect sync, how to communicate complicated ideas, and how to coordinate. He stopped for a moment to let that sink in. That empathy you all liked? That skill we have to read emotions, know how other people are feeling, and make strong connections with others? That changed so we could hunt together. We had to know what our packmates were thinking, where they would go, and what they would do, all without talking since noise would scare off the prey. The screen changed to show brain scans. Our brains are made to think strategically, to find patterns, to keep an eye on movement and guess what people will do. When you see a person watching you, really watching you, they're not just being nice. We're taking in everything about you, from your body language and micro-expressions to what you might do next. It happens without thinking. We can't turn it off. A member of the Torgash Council held up a trunk-like appendage. Are you saying that all of your diplomatic skills, like your ability to negotiate and mediate, were adaptations that made you a predator? Ryan slowly nodded. Yes. We learned how to understand other people, form coalitions, plan long-term strategies, and work together as a group because they made us better hunters. Better at surviving. We just used the same skills in a different way. He looked around the room. I know what you're thinking. You want to know if you can trust us. If we've been messing with you the whole time. And I want to make one thing very clear. His voice got stronger. We chose to be peaceful. We don't wear that mask. People made this choice a long time ago and it's real. We learned how to farm, built cities, made music, art, and philosophy. We agreed that working together was better than fighting. It was better to keep that building than to tear it down. We chose civilization. But, the Torgash councilman said. But we are still who we are, Ryan said in the end. You can't change millions of years of evolution. We didn't want to be predators anymore, but those instincts don't just go away. They're still there, hidden under layers of civilization, culture, and choice. He pointed to the screen that was showing video from Station Kepler 7. Today you saw what happens when people think there is a threat to our pack. And this is the most important thing you need to know. Our definition of pack has grown. It's not just people anymore. It's everyone we've let into our community. Ryan's face softened a little. Those 40,000 people on Station Kepler 7 aren't just our neighbors. They are now our pack. The Millikan family owns and runs the bookstore. Beth teaches the Thaxian kids at the school. The Torgash crew that Travis works with every day. They belong to us. And when the Vrexians came after them, he didn't have to finish. They all got it. Ryan said quietly, so yes. We're hunters. Pack hunters that evolved to chase down prey and plan complicated attacks. Those nice people you've met over the last 3 years? We are still those people. But we can also be something else when we need to. He stared right at the leaders of the council. The question is if you can handle that. If you can accept a species that chose to be peaceful but could still be violent. Because we won't change. We can't change. This is who we are. The chamber filled with noise as dozens of species talked at once. Some people were scared. Some people were mad. Some people were just trying to deal with this new way of thinking about a species they thought they knew. Ryan stood still at the podium and waited. He was going over different scenarios in his head, planning for different outcomes and thinking 3 or 4 steps ahead. Even now, his predatory instincts were at work, figuring out the room, reading the mood, and figuring out the odds. He had no choice. It was something that people did. The talk in the council chambers went on for almost 20 minutes before it finally stopped. Representatives whispered to their aides, looked at their data pads and gave each other worried looks. The weight of what they'd learned was heavy in the air. Finally, the Thaxian chancellor stood up, and her crystal-like body shone in the light of the chamber. There was a tremor in her voice that everyone could hear, even though it sounded like music. "Ambassador Cole," she said, and everyone in the room stopped talking. "I need to ask you something directly, and I need you to be completely honest with us." Ryan nodded his head. "Of course, Chancellor. Are you like the Vrexians?" The question was still there. It was what everyone was thinking but didn't want to say out loud. The Vrexians were the galaxy's monsters, and parents used them to scare kids into being good. They were now wondering if humans were just another version of the same nightmare. Ryan's face got a little harder. "No," he said with a lot of force. "We're not like the Vrexians at all." He opened a new window that showed Vrexian biology and behavior patterns. The Vrexians are predators that attack from behind. They changed over time to become solitary hunters who would hide and wait for their prey to come close before attacking with great force. They protect their territory. They kill to show who's in charge, to take resources, and to show how strong they are. They hunt because they like killing. The screen changed to show how humans have changed over time. We hunt in packs. That's a whole other thing. We changed so that we could work together, help each other, share resources, and keep the group safe. We didn't hunt for fun or to show off. We hunted to get food for our families, to protect our kids, to make sure our community lived on. He stopped for a moment to make sure everyone understood the difference. Vrexians kill for their own sake. People kill for each other. That difference is everything. A Millikan representative spoke up, his voice still shaking. "But you still kill. You are still predators." "Yes," Ryan said. "We are. But here's what you need to know about pack hunters. We need our pack to stay alive. A person alone in the wilderness on Earth would die. We weren't made to be alone. We need one another. And over the course of thousands of years, we changed what we meant by pack." He walked to the edge of the speaking platform, which brought him closer to the people who were there. At first it was just our close family. Then our group. Then our town, our city, and our country. In the end, everyone on Earth became one pack. Then we met you. Ryan pointed around the room. "We made a choice when we joined the council 3 years ago. We chose that all of you could join our pack as well. There are the Millikan, the Torgash, and the Thaxians, as well as every other species here. We don't just think of you as friends or business partners. We see you as something we need to protect." He pulled up the video from Station Kepler 7 again, which showed the moment the humans turned around and faced the Vrexians. "Here's what happens when someone threatens our group. The predator switch, you call it, never went away. It's been there the whole time, hidden under everything else. Now we just aim it very, very carefully." The screen showed Beth helping a hurt Torgash to safety, then it cut back to her killing a Vrexian with brutal efficiency. That same woman did both of those things in the same hour. She is not two different people. She is just a person who cares a lot about her community and will do anything to keep it safe. Ryan let the video play for a few seconds before moving on. "You wanted to know if you could trust us. This is my answer. You can trust that we will always protect those we see as family. You can believe us when we say we're your friends. But you also need to believe that if someone threatens you or any member of the council, we will act the same way we did on that station." The Thaxian chancellor didn't say anything for a long time. Her crystal structure changed colors as she thought about what she had just heard. Finally, she said something again. "What if one day we don't agree with humanity? What if our goals are at odds?" Ryan smiled a little and there was real warmth in it. "Then we'll talk it out like pack members do when they don't agree. We'll disagree, talk things over, and come to an agreement that works for everyone. That's how families act. They don't always see eye to eye, but they work it out." He got more serious. "But I won't lie to you, Chancellor. Yes, you would see what you saw on that station if you really did threaten us or try to hurt people or things we protect. We can see threats and do something about them. But we can also tell the difference between a real threat and a conflict of interest." Another representative, a small insectoid species called the Churiks, spoke up in their clicking language, which the translator turned into, "How do we know you won't decide we're a threat one day? How do we know you won't betray us?" Ryan simply said, "Because we didn't want to be monsters. Check out the history of people. We fought each other for thousands of years, tribe against tribe and nation against nation. We did a great job. But we also learned from it. We learned that working together is better than fighting. That it's better to build bridges than to burn them. That keeping things safe is better than breaking them." He looked around the room at all the different kinds of animals. We could have come to the stars as victors. We could do it. But we decided to come as friends instead. That wasn't a sign of weakness, it was a sign of strength. Choosing peace over violence is a sign of real strength. The council chambers fell into a deep silence. In the end, the chancellor spoke again. The council needs time to think. In an hour we'll meet again. Ryan nodded and walked out of the room. The next hour was the longest of his life. He sat in a waiting room, going over everything he had said and wondering if he had explained things the right way. Other people on the council station kept checking on him, bringing him water and offering to help. They were doing what they always do, taking care of their pack. When he was called back into the room, the mood had changed. There was still fear, but it was mixed with something else. Maybe understanding. Or at least the start of it. The Thaxian chancellor stood up, and her voice was stronger and more sure now. The council has made a choice. We are giving humanity a permanent seat on the council's security directorate by a unanimous vote. We also ask that all weak stations and outposts in council space be given human protection details. Ryan felt better, but he didn't show it on his face. We agree, Chancellor. And we are grateful for your trust. There's more, she said. We're also making new rules for how to assess and respond to threats. People will be in charge of security and will work with all the other species in the council. In the weeks that followed, news of what happened at Station Kepler 7 spread across the galaxy. Of course, the story got bigger like stories do. But the main truth stayed the same. Humanity had shown itself to be something the galaxy had never seen before. A predator species that had really become civilized but still had all of its dangerous skills. The Vrexians also heard the stories. They heard about a kind of animal that could fight them and hunt them down. They never again attacked the council's space. They actually stopped going to areas that were protected by people. When asked why, a Vrexian commander is said to have said, "They fight like us, but they do it in groups and for each other. That makes them more dangerous than we could ever be." Other aggressive species in the galaxy paid attention. There was never an attack on stations with human protection details. People didn't bother ships guarding trade routes. The fact that people were there was a better deterrent than any weapons system. But this is what the council really learned in the years that followed. People weren't just good at hurting each other. They were good at everything that came with being a pack hunter. They were great at making friends, building networks of cooperation, and making communities where everyone felt safe and important. The same instincts that made them scary in battle also made them great at keeping the peace. They could read situations, see problems before they got worse, and settle fights between species that had been enemies for generations. They cared about the health and safety of everyone in the council community just as much as they did on Station Kepler 7. Beth opened her cafe on the rebuilt station, and many different kinds of people came there to meet. Travis kept working as an engineer and taught other people the safety rules that had saved lives during the attack. People who had lost friends in the fighting were sad, but they also kept serving, protecting, and building the community they had fought for. The galaxy learned something important. The most dangerous predator isn't the one that never stopped hunting. It's the one that learned how to build a civilization, chose to protect instead of destroy, and never forgot how to show its teeth when the people it loved were in danger. People had shown that they were that kind of predator. And for some reason that made the galaxy feel a little safer. The end.